Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast, How Inhabit IQ Automates Data Pipelines from Staging to Snowflake, sponsored by Trifacta. I'm Tracy Cook with AWS Insider.net, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. Following the presentations today, we'll host a Q&A session. So please get your questions ready, and we'll answer as many as we can. This entire webcast is being recorded and will be archived for future viewing, and we'll send you an email when the replay is available, and that should be in 24 to 48 hours. And now on to the webcast. Up a little later, we have two representatives from Inhabit IQ, including Aaron Downing, Chief Information Officer, and Misagh Jebeli, Business Intelligence Architect. And leading this off today from Trifacta is Matt Durba, Senior Manager, Product Marketing. So welcome all of you, and thank you for being here. And with that, I'd like to send the event over to Matt. Matt, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Tracy. It's great to be here today, especially with Inhabit IQ, who we're excited to showcase their content. They've got some great things to show you, especially probably a common problem that a lot of people are facing right now. This, modernizing data pipelines with technology that is currently on the market that's focused on cloud architecture. And we're going to showcase that today. Obviously, I'll give a little brief overview of Trifacta and how we do data preparation in the cloud. We'll talk about Snowflake, Fivetran, and also AWS as well. So just to give a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to give a quick overview of just what the modern cloud data stack looks like today and kind of where these vendors fit in. And then we'll talk about Trifacta data preparation. We'll have the team from Inhabit IQ talk about their process and what they've done leveraging these technologies. We'll also provide a demo at the end as well. And following this webinar, we'll post the demo to our YouTube channel and website as well. So you'll be able to view that at any time. And we'll also have a Q&A at the end. So very quickly, I'm just going to touch on the modern cloud data stack. And this is commonly what we're seeing right now with a lot of our customer base. And there is some nuance to this as well and some variations on how this is architected and done. And you might see a little bit of that in what Inhabit IQ is going to talk about. But for the most part, we see a lot of these four technologies being used together, and you'll see Fivetran for the data integration and kind of automating, pulling the data from various different systems and doing it quickly. AWS for storage, or like even data lake, or in our case, execution. And then Trifacta for data preparation, where we clean and blend disparate data sources together. And Misagh from Inhabit IQ is going to talk a little bit about that. And then finally, Snowflake for a centralized data warehouse where you can do your analytics and reporting. And this is just a brief kind of simple architecture of kind of where all these technologies fit in from a visual standpoint. You see the movement from Fivetran into the data lake, or this could even be a data warehouse. But typically Trifacta does the data preparation and makes the data usable for downstream analytics. And then also we can automate those entire pipelines. And I know that probably the thing you're most interested in is seeing how Inhabit IQ does all this. So I will just give a very, very brief introduction of Trifacta and what we do. And I think everybody on this call is probably very, very familiar with this ratio, the 80-20 ratio, where 80% of any analytics project is cleaning and preparing the data. And some people may have heard too, the rest of the 20% of the time is used to complain about the data. But everybody on this call, I can assume, is facing some sort of bottleneck with this. And you have data from various different systems, platforms, companies, wherever you're getting your data. And you have to get that downstream for whether you're doing, leveraging marketing data or third-party data, field event data, things like that. ML and AI, if you're building models as a data scientist, and then reporting and analytics if you're using a BI dashboard or something like Tableau. And the cleanup and preparation of that data can create significant bottlenecks that impacts the whole team. So what we do at Trifacta is reduce this bottleneck in the data preparation process. And how do we do that? We do it through three things: self-service, speed, and cloud. So our interface is very intuitive, it's visual, it's built in a grid style format that most people are familiar with. We profile the data and we empower the people who know the data the best to interact with it. But we also have self-documented lineage in what we call a recipe. So everything that's done to the data is tracked in that recipe. And we also don't ever manipulate the source data. We write a new recipe over the existing data source and create a new output. And it's also very fast. You're interacting with the data in real time. So through the user interface, you are like simply clicking or brushing over data and interacting with it. And then Trifacta will actually infer what the user wants to do with that data and provide suggestions. So you have a faster design, time to design and get value out of your data. You're also able to validate in real time because you get that preview, so that it makes that process much faster. And then once you're complete, you actually put these workflows into production much faster. So you can automate the data pipelines through various scheduling and orchestration techniques. And then you can also share with colleagues, and you can collaborate in real time the same way that you would with a Google Doc. You can fluidly work with teams within your organization on analytics projects. And then finally, we are cloud native. In this scenario, we're running on AWS, but we also natively integrate with Microsoft and Google as well. So no matter what your cloud architecture is, Trifacta will be able to work with any scenario. And then I call this the humble brag slide. So this is just kind of some quick bragging about our company. We are typically ranked #1 across all user and analyst rankings. So you can see here we're ranked #1 by users on G2, and also with Gartner, Peer Insights, and Forrester, Ovum, and Dresner as well. So the people who do use our products seem to like it for the most part, which is great, which is what we strive for. And then if you do want to get started, you can actually try Trifacta for free. So if you go to our website, trifacta.com/start wrangling, and there's a button up in the right-hand corner, you can start. If you already have a cloud architecture in place, you can get started with that, or you can also try our free no cloud required version if you just have like local files. But that is the long and short of Trifacta, and I will hand it over to Darren Downing to take you through a little bit about Inhabit IQ.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Darren Downing. I am the CIO at Inhabit IQ. My goal here in the next couple of slides is just to give you a very high-level overview of who we are and some of the obstacles that we encountered prior to this solution. So first, Inhabit IQ is the parent company to 37 other companies. We refer to them internally as brands that occupy or provide services, SaaS-oriented services for the property management, so long-term like the apartments and things like that, and short-term or vacation rental spaces. On the property side, so here's a little blurb on us. We are international. Like I said, we do have 37 brands in these various spaces. On the property side, We offer solutions in accounting, background screening, the actual property management solution or CRM, document and forms management. There's a significant difference between that as well as e-sign. Some lead management, marketing, property and renters insurance, two very different customers for insurance. And then finally, rent and payment processing. We also have some learning management tooling and whatnot. On the vacation side, we're a little bit more complete. The spectrum of services on the vacation side include more of them, but a little bit very similar, including trip and damage insurance. And then more importantly, I think channel or vendor management. Things like Airbnb would be something that you'd know from there. Anyway, so there's just this phenomenal amount of information just at the brand level as well as at the individual product and resale level that not only do we have to collect, but we have to interpret, transform so that from the various brands that provide the same type of service, we can look at it in the same manner. So there's a lot of interpretation that has to be done. And then, of course, presentation. In the system that we had prior to this, it took two people between 2 and occasionally 4 weeks, but typically 2 to 3 weeks, just to collect, transform, and output the data in Excel reports. None of this was presented online. None of this was accessible without getting them via an email. We did ultimately change that and make it so that they're accessible via a shared resource online. But ultimately, it was a phenomenally labor-intensive process, taking weeks, not exaggeration, taking weeks or even months or worse. We would think that we had their data right and then find out a year later that we had been misinterpreting something for all that time. And so then we'd have to go back again and recollect data for the specified periods and interpret it with the new understanding and then represent and update everyone for that. The goals of the new system were, of course, to get outside of that process, to automate the collection of the data, to provide better tools for us to interpret, to do a real-time shared interpretation of the data. It's not just what is it that we're importing, but what does it mean? And the tools that we are going to discuss, or the Misagh is going to discuss next in this presentation, enable us to do that not just well, but exceedingly well. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Misagh and let him explain and go into a little bit greater detail.
Hi guys, my name is Misagh, and I'm a BI architect at Inhabit IQ. I'll give you a little bit quick background about myself. I've been a BI consultant for the past 15 years. I've worked with all sorts of different methodologies, approaches, and toolings, from business object to Cognos, Tableau, ClickView, and all sorts of things. And based on my experience, business intelligence, it's a very different field than the rest of IT. Just because you can code SQL, it doesn't mean that you can be a good BI developer. If the first thing that comes to your mind is to write some data flow, build some tables, and write some code inside the ETL tool, your project is not going to go far. There are a lot of misconceptions about business intelligence. People think that you have to be able to write 3,000 lines of code, by your third cup of coffee or have PhD in statistics. That is not correct. The whole purpose of our existence in this field is to actually make sense of data and bring value to the business. Think about it. The end goal is to tell the business what's happening, your operational data, why is it happening, your advanced analytics, and what to do about it, help them understand what to do about it. So this is a field that you must understand your resources, your ability, who are your end users, how fast the data changes, and what you need to deliver. Then you need to figure out the strategy and pick your battle right. So there is a methodology that I like to talk about a lot, and that's called the zero line. This is where IT is really ready and the infrastructure is built. So you end up sitting on the same table with the business and figure out what analytics you need to use. So at this stage, we see that the bottom three activities are mostly IT-oriented. You're talking about your data collection, data cleansing, and, the delivery of those data. So I always like to tell people that the sooner you get to the zero line, the more probability of your chances of being successful. So when I first joined, we had a lot of challenges. Like Darren said, we had lots of volume, but we also have lots of varieties. We're collecting financial data and also non-financial data. So we're hitting about 6 different types of financial sources. You're talking about ClickView, Great Plains, Zero, name it. We have to connect to it, gather data. But we also have to connect to a lot of databases like MySQL, relational databases, also NoSQL. There are brands that only have API endpoints for us. And so the variety was one of the challenges that, was the biggest blocker for this project to be successful. We knew that we need to come up with a proper way that our system is always going to be in sync with, all 100 sources. So now I'm going to talk about how we did it. This section is going to be broken into 3 sections. The first part, I'm talking about how we are fetching data, or ELT. The second, how we are actually transforming those data that we are using Trifacta. And then how we are reporting on it right now and how we will be reporting on this data in the future. So a little bit about 2 different approaches to data capturing. First, let's talk about the old traditional way of data capturing, which was, ELT. You connect to the source, you transform the data, then you insert it to your, destination tables. There were a lot of problems with that, especially if you were dealing with lots and lots of different sources and that had lots of volume. The first one would be, you would probably need lots of bandwidth. So if somebody's watching Netflix on the server, the process is going to fail and you're going to come in the morning and start it again. The second part would be, you have to monitor these processes all the time. Can you imagine monitoring over 100 data extracts every day? The third one is the performance issue that you would probably be causing on those sources. Some of the systems we are reading data, for example, reservation pricing, you have to read literally millions of rows every single day. So if we were going to hit the actual database tables, it was going to cause us problem on the source system. So what we did was to come up with data pipelines, such as Fivetran and Stitch, that are replication-based logging. So what happens is that we are not actually reading the table, except the first time we are getting historical data. We enable change tracking on these tables that we need to track, and we read from the log. So we are not fighting other queries for resources. So I can grab like 2 gig of data from you middle of the day without causing any performance issue on your system. Now I want to talk about a few cool things we do with Fivetran and a few cool things we do with Stitch. So with Fivetran, first I have to say that Inhabit has a very, very high regard for data security. So every single connection we have made is either through SSH or VPN. But one of the cool scenarios we came across was that one of the brands wasn't accepting SSH. So we had to work with them to create a reverse SSH, and they initiate the connection with us. Other cool thing we did with Fivetran was, we have brands that, have 200-300 databases, one for each client. So I don't want to make 200 connections to 200 databases. So they gave us an API endpoint, and we wrote our own custom Azure functions, and Fivetran would handle it from there. Third thing was the email ingestion. So forget about people dropping files to SFTP anymore. this way, I give you like your own specific email address, and you can send me a CSV file. What happens is that Fivetran is going to pick the file and insert it into my Snowflake without me or any other person needing to go get the file, clean it, put it in the database. Now, two cool features with the Stitch. So we have a lot of few NoSQL databases as well. And one of them, there was no connector for. What happened was that there was no API endpoint as well. So what happened was that they were able to write functions that send us data. So Stitch is giving us API listener. So if I give you your own key and you send data to that listener, it actually gets inserted to my Snowflake table. Other cool thing with the Stitch was that, we had other brands that had lots and lots of data, but they were able to give us a view to replicate. So in most cases, we are a log-based replication, but if the brand is able to give us a view to replicate the view, we do it that way. So where we stand on ETL, now that we have connected over 70 different systems and quite a few more to go, I can tell you that our system is in sync with their systems 100% of the time with minimal monitoring. So, if you invest in a proper data pipeline, it would probably save you a lot of ROI and gives you a lot of time to focus on other area of business. Now, the second part is, where does this data reside? We use a Snowflake as our data warehouse engine. And one of the main reasons we use a Snowflake is because if you're building a data warehouse, you better use the right tool. While we are building this analytic tool, we need an OLAP engine, which is very different than OLTP. So in OLAP is column-based, so your system is actually indexed based on columns. So what happens is that you can query lots of millions of rows, like a matter of seconds or milliseconds, and it can aggregate the data and things like that. So if you need to build an enterprise data warehouse, you must have an OLAP engine. There are a few cool features that we use in Snowflake, and the first one is the cloning feature. So even though we bring data from hundreds of systems during this day, we have no downtime, zero downtime. So what happens is that we have orchestrated Trifacta to actually work with the Snowflake, which I'm going to come to later, but I want to touch base on it right now, that we write to a clone table. So we have our sets of production tables, and we have our sets of cloning tables. So Trifacta never touches production tables. Trifacta touches the cloning tables, and once we are done preparing our data, retiring old rows, we push it to the end user. And this way we have zero downtime. Now to the fun part, Trifacta. So like Darren said, you have to interpret the data from lots of different sources. Some relational, some non-relational, some give us JSONs, some give us CSV. You have to prep this data and put it in, unify it in our data warehouse. And the way we do that is with Trifacta. Just because they're more concerned with the visual rather than writing code, it makes the process 10 times faster. Just imagine how many different variations of state Florida I need to write the code to clean to get to FL. Instead, with Trifacta, I'm able to just select and apply the rule to all the sources. So this way, the speed that we're building all these flows is amazing. Right now, we have about 12 different flows running and cleaning all the data. And another cool feature with Trifacta was that they do have built-in data profiling. So if you give me data and your data is not is missing parts, we've had issues with people giving us incomplete data, and later in the future it's going to cause problem for the business. So we monitor, the quality of data. And Trifacta is able to actually insert that data in our Snowflake, and we can query it. So in this slide, I have about probably over 25 to 30 different systems I'm unioning inside Trifacta. And this is all with point and click. And I just inserted it into my data warehouse. Now, we are a data warehouse, so every day we get new incremental loads. The way we do it is based on absolute maximum values that was inserted into our data warehouse. So we do keep track of what was the last value that was inserted into the destination table, and we insert it into somewhere that is queryable. So next time we are running Trifacta, we're saying, hey, can you check when was the last value? And go tell Fivetran, to pick anything after that. These are some of the samples from one of the advanced analytics we have. So, some people gave us tax breakdown. Some people gave us like a JSON file. If you have to highlight it and break it down by ourselves, I would think something like this with SQL from over 50 different databases would take days. But with Trifacta, we speed this flows in half a day. So we did all this, and we're at the zero line, almost at the zero line. And at this point, I'm ready to actually sit with our business analysts and deliver live reporting. So there are roadmap for now, and there is roadmap for the future. Right now, we're concentrating on delivering these reports in Power BI. These are mostly operational reports about what's happening on a daily basis. But in the future, we are looking forward to actually provide the data sets as it is for the end user and enable them to explore it. So everybody in my organization is going to be a data analyst. To do that, we're working with Tellius, which is a search-based business intelligence tool that ingests data to the memory, and they're able to actually, slice and dice all the data without any aggregation. They're also able to implement any more AI algorithms that we need in the data. So not only we know what happened, but we would also be able to know why it happened. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Matt.
All right. Thank you very much. That was great. And we just actually got a lot of questions. So I'm going to get to the demo, but please keep asking questions. We're queuing them up now. And right after this demo, we will open it up and answer as many questions as we can. But thank you, Darren. Thank you, Misagh. And yeah, we hope you enjoy this demo, and we've put some fun music.
For those of us using Snowflake as the cloud analytics platform, Trifecta can help us to accelerate the process of data preparation and cleaning through the native support of the Snowflake platform and services. So in this short demo video, we will highlight the restructuring and blending of Snowflake data with an external dataset to produce a resulting output, which is then published to a fresh Snowflake table. The example use case here is that we have an interest in the rental market across the different regions, and thus we are trying to establish an understanding on the price to rent ratio for the different metropolitan areas. The complete data we have to work with for our analysis comes from a combination of Snowflake tables and external files. Here we have the rental pricing based on counties for the average 3-bedroom homes in an Excel format, which we will import. And down below we have median home values for various metros that are provided through a Snowflake table or dataset. We also have census population data for all states residing in a Snowflake table. So together, we will perform some restructuring aggregation of the dataset, we'll join them to create a more complete or enriched dataset, which we can write to a new Snowflake table where the data can be used for downstream analysis. Here we have defined a quick demo workflow where we have already imported a table from Snowflake. This is a states population table. Next step, we'll be bringing in what we call the rental pricing information. For that, we'll upload an Excel file from our desktop. Now that we've imported the rental pricing information, let's go back to Snowflake and bring in now median home values information. We'll navigate to Snowflake connector, go to schema, add our table, and here let's open up the median home value information, see what we have in the dataset. So as you can see here, this dataset is structured in more of a columnar format, where the yearly pricing information is presented in individual columns. In order for us to perform our analysis, we really need to unpivot these into rows to make it easier for us. So with Trifacta, you can easily do this. We can navigate to the column view, select the columns that we like to unpivot, and we'll hit the unpivot function. So we do that. And now we have our key and value columns. The next step is for us to extract the year from our key by simply highlighting. We rename this column to year, and we now like to perform a quick aggregation where we roll it up to the state level and region name. So with that, we do a group by state, region name, the year, and the resulting value will be the average of our existing values. Okay. And now we can rename this to be median home price average, right? Let's move back to our workflow and let's deal with the other dataset, which is the rental pricing information. Remember, this is in an Excel format. We have just imported it. We'll bring it up. We'll do some quick preparation. And again, we'll have to perform the unpivot function like we did with the previous dataset, given that this data is in a columnar format. With this, we'll switch over to our column view, select all columns, and we will now perform the unpivot function. Similarly, we wanted to extract just the year. Rename our column. And again, we'll apply the aggregation based on the metro level. Again, we want to perform the average calculation of the existing value. We'll quickly rename this column to be price, median rental price, average. Now that we have this information, let's just join this with our previous data set which is the medium home value that we processed earlier. For the join key, we want to join by state. We want to add another join key, which we will join by metro and region name. And lastly, the third join key will be based on the year of the data. Now that we have indicated our join conditions, let's just move along and select the information that we would like to be part of our resulting joint data set. We'll quickly preview and add that to our recipe. Now lastly, we'd like to enrich this or blend this with our census information, which has the population based on per state. We'll go through another join operation here, and we navigate to datasets in current flow, select on our state population, hit accept. We perform an inner join. Certainly want to join by state, the state code, and add one more join key condition, which is the year. Move on to the next step. Drop some of these duplicate join key, the state name, and hit review. Right. So this completes the restructuring and enriching of all our three datasets into a final format that we'd like to now take and publish back to Snowflake so that we can utilize this dataset further for downstream analysis. To do that, we'll hit the run job. We will navigate to our destination, click on Snowflake, select our schema, target schema, hit create table, and we'll just call it median rental price per square foot, county, 3-bedroom, and today's date is 2020-09-27. We have to update and quickly run the job. We quickly verify the job outputs and details. Let's look at the output destination, was published back to Snowflake under the schema, and here's the actual profile. Let's navigate over to the Snowflake UI, and we'll go into our schema, and let's verify that the table does exist. You can do a quick search. Let's look for median rental price per square foot, county. This is our resulting table here. Let's click on this and preview the data. So as you can see, here is the actual output of the cleansed data set that was produced by Trifacta.
All right. That concludes the demo. Hopefully everybody liked that or got some value out of it. We are getting a lot of questions, a lot related to like processes and the actual functionality of some of these, the technology we covered. So Misagh, I think there's going to be a lot of questions for you. But to start us off, like one of the questions, and there's a few questions related to this topic that came in, but asking about like going from old legacy processes to new processes, especially in modern stack, what was the learning curve like for adopting these cloud technologies?
So it's
actually, I want to interject. I want to comment to that first, if you don't mind, Misagh. the biggest thing for me as a manager was the understanding the speed with which we became able to move, and the change from seeing data come through monthly to coming through near real time. That was just for a good while kind of mind warping. Now, in terms of tooling and moving from old to the new stack, I can speak to that a little bit, but I think Misagh will probably say a little better than me, so I'll let him finish that up.
So if you're, involved in old traditional ETL tooling, old data warehouses, you have this idea that this project was going to take like a year and at least 5-6 architects and things like that. With the new tool set, it's literally sign up and go. I can speak to Snowflake and I can speak to Trifacta. With Trifacta, from the moment we signed up with them to start a demo, it was about less than a week to actually have our own environment and have it connected to our data warehouse and have 2-3 flows to run. We didn't have official training at that point on Trifecta, but we have 2-3 flows running and we were experimenting with things. Tools like this are very user-friendly and they're supposed to help you get it started and get far really quick without any learning curve. And that's exactly what you're doing.
Great,
so
thank you.
To, what's happening in this field right now, I see like 2 huge movements. One is in the data pipeline and data transformation part, that there is no more data engineers working all the time on ETLs. This is basically point and click and go. The other part I'm seeing is the effort on reporting in search-based AIs. No more data aggregations. Search analytics is coming up to be the future of this field as well. So which makes you think in 10 years' time, would there be data engineers? Would there be data scientists? Or are they both going to get combined?
And we got a couple questions related to movement to cloud too, and this is probably great for the guys that Inhabit, having gone through this. But there's one that's kind of a 2-parter. When you move to cloud, what features should you consider most? And then also, what's the most important? Like, what do you consider the most important, processing or security?
Well, so I can speak to part of that. One of the problems we needed to solve was consistency. In other words, not only did we need the data in a timely manner, but we also needed to make sure that it was accurate. One of the frustrations that we had in the old system was that from month to month, numbers could vary. In other words, whether they modified the underlying query, the party giving us the data modified their underlying query, or the engineers didn't validate something. Any number of factors could cause the data to come through wrong. In the new system, so when you're looking to cloud, look for something that's going to, A, be able to connect to all the disparate systems you own, and then B, something that's going to be able to not only ingest the amount of data, the volume that you need, but also can verify it. It can go through, not just clean the data, but verify that the data is what you're expecting. So those are a couple of key factors to consider. Security, of course, is also important, and so you need to make sure, for us, for example, given the brands that we have, we not only wanted people to be able to see their data, but depending on their level of responsibility or visibility over the corporation, they should be able to see data among other brands. So, for example, if they're an EVP over a division, they should be able to see the data for all brands. Well, the solutions that we chose do exactly that. They not only limit data row horizontally, so which brands they would have access to, but also vertically. We can control which columns they would have access to. So that was important to us, and these tools let us do that.
Can I speak to the processing? So we wanted a Lamborghini, that was for sure. Some of these brands that we're connecting to, we literally have to track over 100 gigs of rows just to build a final data set of 3 or 4 gig of data of reservation. So my staging area has about 3 or 4 billion rows, about 400 gigabyte of data, and we're not even done. This is just a start. But, there are times I'm running these queries and, I'm sitting with Darren, he's like, oh my God, that used to take like an hour to run an old system, and it comes back in like less than 6 seconds. That's on the Snowflake side. Now on Trifacta side, when we're cleaning this data set, I think my biggest data set that I ran was the initial reservation data. I believe I cleaned over 200-300 million rows. That took less than an hour.
Actually, I want to follow up one thing that Misagh mentioned, which is volume, the amount of data. So again, if you're going to deal with large amounts of data, I would be concerned with 2 things. One is speed. You obviously need a tool set that lets you move very quickly. But the other is cost. I mean, it's a thing. We obviously all have budgets we have to work within, and they matter. I will say that we had a couple of missteps along the way where we ended up either having to re-ingest data because we realized something was wrong with it or whatever the cause. The vendors have all been outstanding. They almost all have a means or a mechanism that allows you an initial onboarding where they basically don't charge to get historical data, and then they charge on a go-forward basis. They also were really flexible with us when we realized, oh, hey, we just imported so many million rows, and we need to re-import them. Can you help us with that? So cost is really important, and these vendors have all been outstanding as it relates to working with us as we moved through this process.
Well, on behalf of all of the vendors, I will take credit since I'm the only one on right now, but that's great to hear. And for us, yeah, that's very important to us as well, is being able to natively integrate with the cloud architecture too, and especially like the security and governance that's already in place, because you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel for to add our product into your architecture, and especially when somebody's working with data that's secure and private. You don't want somebody opening up Trifacta and being able to access something that they don't have access to. So we natively inherit the security that's already in place. And a couple people were asking about the ability to do some on-hands work with the platforms. You can actually go to trifacta.com, and in the right-hand corner, you'll see start for free, and you can actually sign up for our free product. And if you do have, let's say, an AWS S3 bucket, you can connect to that. And also, if you do have Snowflake already, you can connect to that as well. So you can give it a try and actually get your hands dirty. We also have a platform on Google as well, so you can try that out. Let's see. Somebody asked, what is the typical persona of someone who uses Trifacta? As Misagh mentioned, that it's very visual, and it doesn't leverage code. So you can span across the board of who the persona is, because just about anybody can use it who has data. But however, we see everything from somebody who is using Excel spreadsheets where they need to do some more complex work, or even because it's a cloud platform, scalability can become an issue, because at a certain point your Excel spreadsheets are going to not work anymore because there's a row limit. There's also you can run into issues with your machine and having enough power behind it. Then also at the same time, like you've got people like data engineers who are building these data pipelines, or people who are leveraging some code within Trifacta as well, because we do have some extensibility there. So it can be used by anybody who does really have data issues or is working with data, whether it's a data scientist cleaning and preparing data for a model, a data analyst who's doing a visualization, or a data engineer who's building and automating pipelines.
And also interject about Inhabit. So the reason we did put this data stack together was we're a team of two, and we're going to go extract data, transform the data, do a data model it, and present in the reports. And our landscape changes a lot. Not only we have lots of data everywhere, but we also get new requests for new reports that we have to go extract new data from. So the reason this stack is built together is because we can spin up this project in a matter of weeks now.
I want to add one thing in terms of directly answering the persona question. It almost makes me giddy or childlike getting to play with these tools and watching the team play with the tools. I can't tell you how exciting it is to not just make one single transformation on a given column, be able to literally instantly make multiple transformations and get the data right near real time. I'm actually a stickler. I'm really accuracy of the data, the way it's presented, et cetera. Those are really important things to me. And we've been able to do that with these tools. So, I mean, I think in terms of persona, even if you weren't a data person beforehand, you'll become a data person because they basically unlock some of the secrets, if you will, behind data and let you get in there and work with it and get it to do what you need it to do. So I definitely think it's an enabling tool.
Wow, that's that's such a great statement. I almost want to end on that because it sums it up. So such a great testimonial for our platforms, especially at Trifecta. That's exactly what we strive to do: is empower the end users and give them the ability to get value out of their data. I think we have time for probably one more question. And this might be pretty specific to you, Misagh. I don't know if you can answer this question, but we'll give it a go to see what you think. The question is, to produce reports with Tellius Argo solutions such as data KPIs for governance, can a functional profile such as data steward or a service delivery manager handle the reporting process from creation until automation of KPIs in real time? I don't know if that's in your wheelhouse. It's not in mine.
I think one of the main existence of Tellius and third generation of business intelligence, search-based analytics, is that exactly. So it's about removing IT to actually aggregate the data for you on blind reports. It's basically enabling the end user to actually talk to the reporting solution the way they're talking to Google Home or they're talking to Siri. So, for example, some of the questions we're working on the demo is like, hey, give me all the reservations for this quarter, compare it to last quarter, and things like that. And then not only that, to understand your operation, the systems go beyond that, and they have the AI capabilities that they tell you if there is a big change, why there is a big change. Or they understand you to understand who are your customers, they segment the customers, and things like that. So the whole goal is to remove IT from analytic process.
Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. We have Darren, Misagh, thank you very much for participating in this and going through your process and how you've been able to accomplish a lot of your analytics initiatives on a modern data stack. We appreciate your time, and I'll hand it over to Tracy.
Fantastic. That was great. Those are excellent presentations and a really lively Q&A. So that was really fantastic. And then we had the fancy demo. That was also really cool. So, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your expertise and your time today. And I'd also like to thank the audience for attending today's webcast, sponsored by Trifacta and presented by AWSinsider.org. With that, I just want to thank everybody one more time, and this concludes our webcast. Thanks again.